Mr. Trump's plane, we want to show you a live picture now from Georgia, has just touched down. You're looking at a live picture now from the tarmac. It flew from New Jersey to Georgia, where the former president will be making his way to the Fulton County Courthouse to surrender in just a short time under heavy security.
And as we heard from Rebecca, this will be a very quick trip. He is expected to return back to New Jersey tonight. We don't believe there will be any party or ceremony that he will fly back to, as we have seen him do in instances in the past. And again, this will be a quick trip. His arraignment, as we heard from Brooks, will be sometime later.
All right, and now
we move to the many legal questions that still remain for Mr. Trump and the other alleged co-conspirators as well in the investigation.
Yeah, for more insight into how this process will all unfold, we're joined right now by David Levine, law professor at UC College of the Law. David, thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Of course.
Okay, aside from the $200,000 bond, Mr. Trump has also agreed to conditions for his release. What do you know about those conditions?
Well, he did agree to an extensive list of conditions, primarily that he won't engage in witness tampering or trying to do something about tampering with the jury. What I found interesting is that he wasn't specifically barred from criticizing the prosecutors, and he has certainly availed himself of that even after the arrest, the indictment was announced. And I assume he will continue to do that. But otherwise, the restrictions are relatively standard, especially given who we're talking about. So he has more freedom of movement than an ordinary defendant might have.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. Julie mentioned that ahead of his surrender this morning, Mr. Trump actually replaced his top Georgia lawyer, Drew Findling, with another person. What do you think about this move?
Well, as one of the other people said, Mr. Trump changes lawyers about as often as he changes his socks. I think this new person, Mr. Sadow, he's very, very experienced in Georgia RICO law, which is obviously key to this case. He's handled some of these complex cases before, and so he seems like a good choice to at least add to the team. Now, why he replaces another lawyer who also is a well-known lawyer in Georgia for criminal cases, that's a little uncertain, but it is part of Mr. Trump's habit to make some of these changes. I think one thing it'll be interesting to see is if the new lawyer, not today, but later on, says he needs extra time because he just joined the case, and whether the judge will entertain that kind of a motion will be interesting to see what happens. But this seems like a very good choice for Mr. Trump in terms of having a lead lawyer who knows what he's doing, who knows his way around these courthouses, and knows his way around Georgia law.
All right, David, as we talked to you, we're looking at live pictures there of the Trump plane that just landed there in Georgia. We're waiting to see the former president exit that plane any moment now. We have learned also today, David, that one defendant, Ken Chesborough, asked for a speedy trial, and we're hearing something about a trial date of October 23rd. Will that mean that these 19 defendants will be tried separately then, rather than all together?
I think it's more likely that the answer is yes to that, Julie. Mr. Chesborough wanted to push it, and the district attorney said, okay, fine, let's do that. And she's within her rights and under Georgia law, because under speedy trial law, you do have a right as a defendant to a speedy trial if you want it. That's not something Mr. Trump wants, but something Mr. Chesborough wants. And so she obliged, and it has also something to do with the formal length of that grand jury that indicted all of these people. So it may well be that we're going to end up with separate trials. It's inconceivable that 19 defendants and 30, 40, 50 lawyers will all be in the same trial. So there may be some severance, some separate trials. And also, I think the expectation is that many of the people, especially the lesser known names, are going to end up taking some plea deals, and they are not going to be in this case for a very long time.
Well, speaking of some lesser-known names, we saw a number of Trump's co-defendants turn themselves in yesterday. Granted, Rudy Giuliani is a big name, and he made headlines yesterday. Mark Meadows turned himself in today, but there are still a handful of people who have not surrendered. And why do you think they're holding out? Do you think that maybe they're kind of letting Trump get the attention first? They have a deadline of tomorrow midday. Do you think that they'll meet that deadline?
Well, I'm sure they'll meet the deadline because the district attorney has made it clear that if they don't meet the deadline, she's going to be arranging for their arrest warrants. and to have the Georgia police go out and find them. So I don't think that's going to happen. It doesn't take very much because the district attorney has been pretty accommodating, I would say, in terms of setting bail in advance. So these defendants will know what they're up against. And I don't think it's going to take that long. So I would be very surprised if any of the people who are still on the list as having not yet been booked are not booked by noon Eastern time tomorrow. This jail is open 24 hours a day, so there's no problem. They're down in Georgia. They can go to the Waffle House and, sign the papers and then go over to the Fulton Street Jail and take care of business.
All right. We are awaiting the former president to exit that plane there in Georgia. David, really quickly before we go to Fox News coverage, some defendants are pushing for this trial to be moved to federal court, largely due to a jury issue. How likely is that to happen?
Truly, it's possible. The law that they're working under is one that protects federal officials, that they have the privilege to move cases. And because of the structure of this case, it's quite possible that if one of the people at a federal office like Mark Meadows or President Trump is able to remove the case, they all will move over. And it goes back, as I understand it, it goes back to after the Civil War, to the Reconstruction era, that the idea was that you wanted to give the people who were enforcing the end of the Civil War down south some protection in federal court as opposed to state court. Now, the problem is that the defendants are going to have to make a colorable claim that what they were doing leading up to January 6th was within the course and scope of their formal jobs. Whether we're talking about the president, whether we're talking about his chief of staff, whether we're talking about Jeffrey Clark, who was in the Justice Department. And the counter-argument is going to be that planning to steal an election and help facilitate a coup was not within the job description. So that's where the rubber will meet the road. Frankly, I think they have a chance. I don't think it's outlandish. It's certainly not as outlandish as the case where Mr. Trump tried to do the same thing in the case involving Stormy Daniels up in New York, where that claim was quickly rebuffed and the case was sent back to state court. This one, I'd say it's a coin flip, whether it goes over to federal court. Fani Willis, the Georgia DA, will still prosecute the case. It'll still be treated as a Georgia case, but it'll be essentially across the street. It'll be in the federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta instead of the Fulton County courthouse in downtown Atlanta, and it'll be a different judge. But in large measure, the proceedings will be similar. But it is true that the pool for the jury will be a little wider than just Atlanta, and that means it'll take in some more conservative suburbs of Atlanta. And so that might be helpful to Mr. Trump and to some of the others. But that would be the main procedural advantage. Otherwise, it'll just look like one courthouse instead of another. Well, I see you might want to go to that picture, so I'll stop now.
Yeah, we're watching former President Donald Trump come down the steps off of his plane, and it is on the tarmac as he will now proceed to a car and head over to the Fulton County Jail to be processed for the crimes that he's been accused of. He's there waving to people who are outside, presumably waving to the media, and he's now stepped inside his motorcade.
Yeah, and that motorcade, again, will take him to the Fulton County Courthouse there in Georgia, where he's expected to be inside and outside in what is a quick process. The sheriff says we're still waiting to see if Mr. Trump will have his mugshot taken. But again, he has a new attorney today. The Trump plane just landed there in Georgia. You can see the cars lined up. That motorcade will take him to the courthouse there for that processing. If we do we have David? We want to ask one more question?
Sure.
David, so which of the cases against Mr. Trump do you think is the most serious in terms of charges, sentencing, and the scope of the accusations?
Well, Julie, each one has its dangers. This one potentially has tremendous danger for Mr. Trump and the others because there are so many charges, but also because neither the next president of the United States nor the governor of Georgia would have the power to pardon from these from the state prosecutions in Georgia. So that's fraught with difficulty. The other cases, the Florida case involving the confidential documents, is a relatively easy case to try. So it's fraught with difficulty for Mr. Trump for that reason, but it's a very different jury pool. And, you don't know what's going to happen, but it's a narrow case. It's a serious case. because of the breach of confidential information. And then when we look at January 2nd, that case was designed for speed. It's the antithesis to the Georgia case. One defendant in Washington, Mr. Trump, not 19 defendants. And that also could go relatively quickly. We'll know next week. There's a hearing next week on the tentative scheduling for that case. So we'll know relatively soon what kind of a schedule that case is on. The Florida case, I think they said it was May of 2024 is the tentative trial date, and we'll see in Washington. So each one is a landmine.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, you pick your poison, if you will. This is fraught with difficulty for Mr. Trump. In contrast, the New York case looks like nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if that got played out, because I view that as zero chance that Mr. Trump would ever go to jail on that case. I think pleading guilty to a misdemeanor is the way to get out of that one. But the other three are very much fraught with difficulty.
All right. David Levine, as always, thanks for your input tonight. We really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.